Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Roadmap Career Profiles. We're really excited to have our special guest today, so I'm going to spend a moment to introduce her, and then we're going to get started with our conversation. So today we have Debbie Tulang-DeSilva. She has been the Program Director of the Office on Equality and Access to the Courts at the Hawaii State Judiciary since February 2005. Prior to that, she served as the Deputy Corporation Counsel for the City and County of Honolulu State Attorney for the Regulated Industries Complaints Office with the State of Hawaii Department of Commerce and Consumer Affairs and Deputy Public Defender for the State of Hawaii. Ms. Tulang-DeSilva received her law degree from California Western School of Law in San Diego and her bachelor's degree in secondary education and psychology from the University of Hawaii at Manoa. As Program Director for OEAC, Ms. Tulang-DeSilva was instrumental in establishing the Hawaii State Judiciary very first Court Interpreter Certification Program, which she served as a model program for organizations with interpreting needs in languages considered most as rare. So we're really excited to have you today, Debbie. So thank you so much for agreeing to talk with us. And as based on your bio, you have an extensive experience and have played a significant role in promoting language access here in Hawaii. So we're here excited to have you and hear about your own kind of professional journey. So to start off for the first question, if maybe you're comfortable, please share with us kind of like what led you to be on this path and how you kind of see the work related to supporting multilingual community.
Thank you so much. And at first, I just want to say aloha to everyone. Thank you for being here. And thank you so much to the Hawaii Language Roadmap Initiative Project for inviting me to share information with you. You know, my journey is quite an array, and I'm so blessed to actually have a position today to be able to service our multilingual community. So just to expand a little bit more on my background, yes, as an undergraduate, I was an education and psychology major. And then I did a little bit of teaching, and then I went off to law school. I wanted to do a little bit of education, administration, and training, and then couple that with a legal background. And then I started off after law school in the public defender's office here in Hawaii. And that really allowed me to meet and work very intimately with a lot of multilingual individuals in my clientele. After being on the criminal defense side, I then moved a little bit more into administrative in the Regulated Industries Department for the Commerce and Consumer Affairs, and that was on the prosecutorial side. So it allowed me to flip ends of the legal spectrum and work administratively in licensing. And then after that, I expanded a little bit more into the City and County Corporation Counsel, and that allowed me to prosecute liquor and police commission type cases. And then I thought it was about time for me to actually come full circle and move back to training, which was my passion. And again, I reiterate how blessed I am to have then come back to the judiciary in the capacity of the director of the Office on Equality and Access to the Courts, in overseeing access and providing equality for court customers across the board. And so that allowed me to bring in my psychology, education, and legal training. And primarily what I do, aside from doing language access, is also training judges and court staff in the language access and other equal access areas of the courts.
Very interesting. Yeah, no, thank you for sharing that. Just a little bit more about kind of what you do in terms of the training and coming to like providing the language access. So with the interpreter program and that training and certification involved, what kind of gave the start to that or the birth to that program?
Coming into this position, you know, the courts have always recognized, especially here in Hawaii, that we have a lot of clientele and our court customers that speak languages other than English. You know, we are an English-speaking court, although Hawaiian and English are our co-official languages. English is primarily how, you know, organizations and agencies here do business. But coming into this position and the courts realizing that there are, of course, constitutional rights for someone who doesn't speak English very well to be able to navigate our court system and have their equal day in court, in addition to a program that was going to support that essential need of our population. And so what we do on a practical level is we've established a more formal program, which we call the Court Interpreter Certification Program, as you stated, that helps us formally support that essential need in our courts and the critical role interpreters play, and build upon that. And so we have formal training, testing, and certifying now.
That's amazing. Awesome. And so what opportunities are available in the court systems for students with language skills?
Sure. There's many different avenues. They're a valuable resource. And so I would tell students with language skills, for one, bilingual staff is one avenue to go with. So if they're interested in a judiciary position, but they have language skills, we use our bilingual volunteer staff to help us service our limited English proficient court customers. So alongside of them performing their tasks in a judicial or legal position, they can also use that to be supportive in their language skills. That would be the ones that we cultivate out of the certification program that are independent and that we use on a daily basis. And so there are different avenues and opportunities for students with language skills in the courts, something that, like I said, we use every day.
Yeah, I appreciate you highlighting both those opportunities because one, I think it's important for students to be aware that using their language skills doesn't mean they have to be in a position or a job where it's 100% always using their language skills, right? It can become the ebb and flow of their work and recognizing that it's always useful to serving our community and our population, in addition to kind of the more traditional interpreter, translator positions.
Exactly.
Great. And so like with particularly the court interpreter certification program, how do you think it can help students if they pursue that in the job market later on?
Sure. It's really important to highlight that the Hawaii State Judiciary is one of the leading agencies in Hawaii in terms of building interpreter skills and language skills in people. And so through the program, what that would do is allow a student with language skills, if they participate and go through the basic orientation workshop and our written exams, and even if they choose to go on to the oral exams, if they receive our credential, it is recognized by many agencies here because we're the leader in this area. So one, that would help them build their marketability in the community. Two, when you go even beyond Hawaii's borders, because our certification program incorporates a model and testing instruments that are recognized by the National Center for State Courts, Council of Language Access, and its 42 member states, their marketability even expands beyond Hawaii's borders. So in terms of their job opportunities and job skills, they become more marketable because we are part of the National Center for State Courts and this conglomeration of the 42 member states. We support each other in standardization and credentialing. And so coming through our program and getting a certain credential automatically makes them recognizable beyond the borders, you know, and I want to say almost nationwide because 42 out of the 50 states participate. Yes.
Very interesting. Yeah, it's amazing about the different opportunities for high school graduates, college students that they could participate and kind of build their resume and build kind of their career path. So it's very cool. And for anyone interested in using their language skills, really. And I recognize all languages are important and like it's what's most paramount is serving the community. But currently in the kind of program, do you see a particular need for more interpreters in a certain language than others?
Yes, and we post that on our website, what our top demand languages are. But I would say, you know, the top 15 is where you want to be looking at. But even within the top five, you know, Pacific Islander languages are extremely in high demand, not only in the courts, but even beyond. And so languages at the top would be like Chuukese, Marshallese, but Spanish, Korean, Mandarin, Vietnamese, those are all in our tops as well. And they continue to maintain those. And I failed to mention, even our Filipino languages, Ilocano, has always been in our top five over the last several decades. And when you look at it, like, I mean, say for instance, if you look at the Bureau of Labor Statistics, I think their most recent occupational outlook report, I mean, they're stating that between 2018 and 2028, looking projectively, that the need for interpreters and translators are going to increase like 19%, you know, way above the average for other occupations. And I think it just goes hand in hand with nationwide our increasing growth in national globalization and recognizing that we're going to see increases in the diverse population. And so hand in hand, interpreters and in translators, you know, equates to people with language skills. And so it's just a great time for students with language skills to expand on that and use that to their advantage.
Great. And is there a cost to the program?
Yes, and so our basic orientation workshop, which is the minimum requirement right now and the first step, and that's like a 2-day basic orientation workshop where we orient them to court interpreting. That's valued right now at $150, and we've been able to keep it at that. But that's the value. And the judiciary is always looking for grant opportunities. And so I'm really happy to say that, you know, we've always been successful with partnering with grant partners and funders. And we've been able to bring that cost down to like $50, so a third of the price. So for a 2-day full orientation workshop that is working towards a credential, that's a pretty, you know, great cost to that. But like I said, we're always looking to be able to subsidize and offset the cost, because we know that that can be a barrier for some, especially when you're first coming out as a student with language skills.
That's awesome to hear that, like, the court and your office is really working tirelessly to like find grant opportunities to lower the cost and make it accessible, so those with the skills can get the certification and credentials to be working and employed in that kind of area. So very cool. The next question is a little more broader, but it's, what advice do you have to help students leverage their language skills in the job market, whether that's in the judiciary sector or just any sector?
And that's a great question. I mean, and it's an opportunity to give advice. And as an employer that, you know, has had to hire over the years myself, and being on different interview panels, what I can say is a plus, and what advice I give even my own family members that are young and up and coming is to always, you know, I want to almost say exploit. I mean, just you, if you have a language skill, you need to market that on your applications or your resumes. Even if you're applying for a job that you think has nothing to do with language, or they're not advertising the position as anything to do with language, go ahead and market that. Because as employers, when you're interviewing or considering different potential candidates, and maybe you have one or two or several that are pretty equal in their skills and qualifications, language is a plus. And when all else is equal, the one with the language in this market and globalization growth today and diversity, that might be the one, that might be the factor that tips you over. You know, that's going to end up getting you the job. And I think more and more with language access being promoted across the board, employers are looking to have a more diverse workforce. They want to be able to service their customers in an equal and fair fashion. And so being equipped with staff that can service in different languages is one of the major components to meeting that. And so that would be my main advice, is to leverage those skills and make sure that you beef your resume up, and in interview processes that when they ask you to share, you know, anything else about yourself, go ahead and make sure that you focus on language.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's such important words of advice, especially for students who primarily, excuse me, my computer's making sound. But yeah, I think such important words of advice, because primarily for students who are learning a language predominantly in a classroom, there's maybe some insecurities or lack of confidence to advertise your language skills or promote it. So I think that's a really great point, as well as for students who are heritage learners who might think it more natural and not think about bringing it out and publicizing it. So yeah, thank you. Then kind of similarly, on more of a macro level, of why do you think having multilingual workforce is important, particularly in Hawaii?
Well, I think Hawaii is in such a unique position. I mean, in terms of, like I mentioned, the growth of globalization and recognition of diversity, and recognizing that we're in an era of you know, recognizing how diverse our populations are nationwide. But Hawaii in particular, we're in a strategic location in the Pacific. And we are known for being the melting pot of language and culture and ethnicities. And so it puts us in a particular place where our workforce needs to address language skills and diversity. And so particularly in Hawaii, especially through efforts like the Hawaii Language Roadmap Initiative project, where it's like one of 6 programs that recognizes the importance of a multilingual workforce. The Judiciary joins in that effort because we get it, we recognize, and because projects like the roadmap and other agencies like the Judiciary really beginning to focus and recognize that importance, we are coming together to educate educators and employers about the value of a multilingual workforce. The more you can build that support and relationship for organizations through the employment perspective, you make a stronger community when you can have a better relationship and communication with the ones that you serve. And so you're only as good as how you service. And so if you're in the service industry, and arguably most organizations are in some fashion or other, you're only as strong as a community and as a state if you build that multilingual workforce, because it mirrors who your community is. And you can only communicate with them if it's in a method or a way that they understand. And so that's how I feel Hawaii is a very important example. And we can serve as the model of building that multilingual workforce, because we are such a highly multilingual state.
I think that's beautifully said, so thank you. And I think that idea of servicing our own community and being a mirror and having connections is really valuable, so that the institutions and organizations can truly connect with the community and the individuals who they need the services, as well as who can benefit and gain from them. So yes, thank you. And then in closing, are there any kind of words of encouragement or final thoughts for the students who are pursuing the SEAL Biliteracy this year?
Yes, I congratulate you, all of you, on that effort. First of all, it's a great program that is recognizing a lot of the important values that I've mentioned today. But I think in closing, my advice is to never, be ashamed of your language skills. I think in the past, there was such a push that English is the dominant language, and that if you want to succeed, you need to master English. And I think that that's not as true today. I think that, yes, you can learn English to navigate through much of it, but to not be ashamed of your language and not hide it. And so the fact that you've taken the steps to recognize that value, and it's helping you preserve who you are, your culture, your ethnicity, and how you've been raised, and not to hide that identity. In able to teach the world, to teach not only Hawaii or the world, to embrace diversity, is taking those steps to stand up for diversity. And you're taking those steps in recognizing to share that value of who you are, which includes your language in your native tongue. And so the advice is to continue on that path, to use that to your advantage, and to continue just appreciating and valuing who you are and what you have to share with the world.
Wow. I'm going to let those words sink in, because I think that is really important for everyone to hear. And thank you again for sharing your insight and experiences. And I hope this short interview resonates with students, and you do find more students and Seal by Literacy awardees entering into the certification program for the Judiciary and interpreting. So we're excited to see.
Yes, I look forward to that. Thank you so much. Mahalo.
Thanks.